and welcome to the Enchantress Society with Tia Johnson, a place where you get to be you, where you get to unlock your magic in a sacred and judgment-free zone. The Enchantress Society is your witchy sisterhood of enchanting women who guides and supports you along your spiritual journey from the mundane to the magical. I invite you to sit for a spell as I interview guests and spill the spiritual tea on how we can create the magical life we deserve. Hello and welcome back to another wonderful episode. Today we will be talking about what does it really mean when a planet goes retrograde with Ally the Astro Witch. Ally the Astro Witch started her spiritual journey in October 2019 when she found astrology. She then moved on to crystals, then spells, and she also loves anything witchy and has been studying astrology since summer 2020. Ally reads birth charts and transit charts specific to moon phases. She focuses on all the transit happenings in the collective and how they affect us directly. You can find her on Instagram at Ally the Astro Witch. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. We've been connecting online, the power of technology. And it just makes me think when I was a kid, the technology back then was pen pals. Mm-hmm. I had it was a school out in Idaho. And the girl there, we would just write each other and send each other little pictures. I don't know if they do that anymore, but I'm just so thankful that Instagram made it possible for this. So shout out to Instagram, first and foremost.
Yes, I do remember the pen pals. I did have a pen pal when I was younger. To be honest, I cannot remember her name or where she was from, but I do remember having them. And it's so interesting how it works now with going from pen pals, letters, and like snail mail to now Instagram. And you can literally connect with anybody over the world. Like I wouldn't even have this astrology world if it wasn't for social media and the internet pretty much.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely a game changer. Yeah, I can't remember the girl's name. All I know is that it was Idaho because the only thing I knew about Idaho were potatoes. Yeah. So it's ingrained in my mind. But yeah, technology is something which leads me to now where, astrology is, or at least the material to understand it is more available to people. But there are a lot of terminologies and other things that happen that seem overwhelming and confusing to a lot of people, myself included. So how did you get involved in astrology?
So I found this astrologer girl on Instagram, of course, in October 2019. Actually, you know what? I probably found her. Sorry, I found her on a podcast, actually. Now that I think back, all the way back in 2019, it feels like a lifetime ago now. I found her on a podcast actually because her name had magic in it. And I was really drawn to magic and witch stuff. And I just felt I was always into it as a little child. But, you find people around you and they don't like the same thing. And you kind of move away from your likes and stuff. And you kind of cater to other people's likes and what they like. And I finally realized at the age of 28 that I wanted to find who I was and not what other people were wanting me to do. So I actually found her podcast, and it wasn't about witch stuff at all. Actually, it was about astrology. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I always knew there was more to astrology than just your sun sign. So your sun sign is your zodiac, right? So like if you look at a horoscope in the newspaper, way back in the day when there was newspapers, you would look at your zodiac sign. And I just thought, that I was a Scorpio. So I had to read the Scorpio sign and that was what it was. And I never really related to it. And I feel like a lot of people don't relate to their sun sign because of the way it's laid out in the chart. Your sun sign is where you actually want to go. It's not what you're born with. So when you're reading as a child, you don't really relate to your sun sign because of that reason. And some people pull away from the horoscopes and the astrology because they don't relate to what they're reading. But when I found her, I realized that there was more to it. And I wanted to get a birth chart reading. So I got a birth chart reading, and she just blew my mind. And I just couldn't even believe what she was telling me. She had no idea who I was. We only spoke on Instagram to do a payment, and that was it. And all she had was my name and my birthday. And the stuff that she was telling me, it was just like she was reading my soul. Like it was just so crazy. And so, and then I got into crystals and witch stuff and all the stuff that all related to all the stuff, because she told me to get into crystals because of my anxiety and everything that I was dealing with, because crystals are really good for that. So and then because of what happened in 2020, I'm sure everyone's fully aware, we were pushed inside, we were pushed outside of our comfort zones, we were pushed to do something different. So that's how I found astrology, and she was able to teach me astrology and all the signs and all the planets. And now this is what I do. I do birth chart readings, and I mainly focus on transit readings. And the reason I do that is because your birth chart is directly for your birth and where the planets were when you were born. But people forget that the planets are moving every day, all day, every second, every hour, and why am I moody this day? Why am I angry this day? What's going on? Why is my life flipped upside down today? Like, oh my God. So that's why I focus on the transit readings, and especially with the moon phases, because it's all about the emotions and how we're feeling and all this stuff. And that's what the moon does. And with the eclipse season that's just happened, last week, and another one coming up in a couple weeks, the moon phases are really key right now, especially with the collective. So that's when I really started focusing on this part of the chart, because your life changes every day. And yes, the birth chart tells you what your life is, but your transit chart can help you right now. In this exact time, I can look up to see where Mercury is in your chart or where Venus is in your chart, and I can tell you what part of your life is affecting right now. And I find that really powerful, because that's how I've really navigated my whole 2020 life.
Wow.
Because I was able to see my transits and see, okay, this week's going to be really tough for me. This day is going to be really tough for me. And just embrace it. Embrace the struggle. Embrace the complications that come up. And know that your soul chose to be down here at this exact time to experience all of these transits.
That just blew my mind. That is the first time I am ever hearing about transit charts.
Yes.
Wow. And every time I learn something like this that just blows my mind, there's a piece of me that gets angry, because I'm thinking, why isn't this taught in schools? And I know people listening to this podcast is probably saying, Tia says this so many times, because I'm just thinking, as you were saying, oh yeah, this week's going to be hard for me. And I understand that because I looked at my transit chart, and I'm thinking about all the times where I felt off. I have no reason to feel off, but I just do. And I'm starting to understand that it is in direct relation to the planets, especially when there's an eclipse. Like I felt the same way in December I did when this eclipse happened, like right before it happened. But that's just because I needed to start understanding, like, what the heck is going on? I don't have this reason. And I'm also thinking about all the people out there who feel the same way and don't know that it has to do with the planets. And they probably thinking something is wrong with them. As you were saying earlier, when you hang around certain people who aren't into that, then you don't really dive too much into that, because as the saying goes, you're the average of, the 5 people you hang around. So I totally related to that when you said it earlier. So I'm just thinking about the people out there. So how can someone so do they go online to get a transit chart, and then they go to you to help them to interpret it and help them understand it? How can someone get a transit chart?
Yeah, so I just use a public site called astroseek.com. That is a site that I do. It's a public site. It's a free site. All you would need to know is your birthday, your location, and the time. The time is very important because it is your rising sign that is determined by your time, and that's where the house placements are. So hopefully you guys know your time.
Mm-hmm.
Ask your mother.
Yeah.
Maybe she knows exactly what time you're born, at least roughly what time of day,
Mm-hmm.
because the rising signs do change every 2 hours. So that is very
Wow.
important. Because there's 12 signs, 2 hours, 24 hours. So yes, you just go to that site. You can look up your birth chart. You can look up a transit chart. The accounts are free, so you don't have to pay for them. I think you have to like actually make an account to see your transit chart, but it is completely free. I've never paid for the site. So AstroSeek is what I use, but there's like astro.com is also a site that does birth charts. And then I think there's another one, but it's escaping me right now what it was called. But AstroSeek is my favorite because it gives you moon phases, it gives you where the moon is, what degree it's at. It's a very, very good free site that I like to use. But you don't actually have to go get it yourself. Like if you book a reading with me, I can, of course, just look it up.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely will be coming to you to get to know that because I have some things coming up and I need to know my emotional space, not just my head space, but my emotional space and what's going on. Uh, yeah, because it's very interesting how sometimes we have all these emotions or not emotion but energy, and then other days it's just nope,
There's nothing.
not doing
There's
it, nothing.
Yes, exactly. And it all depends on there's fast moving planets, slow moving planets. You know, the slow moving planets affect us a longer term, but it won't affect us like intensely. And the fast moving planets are going to hit us a little bit harder because it's only going to be at that exact degree in that sign for weeks or days or even hours, like the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow. So, what exactly does it mean when a planet is going retrograde?
yeah, so retrogrades are one of the biggest things that people really know. If they don't know astrology, they probably know retrograde because they've heard the name before when it comes to Mercury retrograde, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is only a small part of the retrograde family, of course. But retrograde, what it means is the planet appears to go backwards in the orbit. It actually does not go backwards. A planet is not able to go backwards. But because of where it's sitting relative to the Earth, it appears to be going backwards. But in a way it's still moving forward, but because of where the Earth is and where the sun is and all the other planets, it looks like it goes backwards. So that's why people think it goes backwards, because it kind of looks like it does, but that's just how it looks like in the orbit. But retrograde, because it goes backwards, or I'm putting backwards in a quotation because it doesn't really, go backwards, but
Right, like an illusion
yeah, it's
that
like
is
an
going.
illusion. Yes, exactly. It's hard to explain what a retrograde is in some ways because it's like people see it in a different way than it actually is. It doesn't move backwards, but people think, okay, it's going backwards. It's just how the Earth, like, when we're standing on Earth, the planet's not moving because it's so close to Earth or wherever it is with the other planets and such and such. But retrogrades get a bad rap because you always hear about Mercury retrograde and how terrible it is and how like you shouldn't start anything during it or whatever. But some people don't realize that all planets move retrograde at some point in the year, in 16 months and 18 months or whatever it is. What depends on how fast the planet moves. And it has good and bad results. There are good and bad results of every planet that goes retrograde. So
Yeah, okay, that definitely makes sense because whenever I hear retrograde, I do think, oh no, like let me double check everything, and I do experience some well, I've been experiencing technology difficulties for a while anyway, but,
yes,
but I definitely check. I double check the to line on the email, make sure I'm sending to the right person, make sure the text message is right. And so what are some of the things, well, actually, before I ask you, what are some of the things people can do for the retrogrades in general? What makes the Mercury retrograde so special that people
So
just notice that one the most?
yeah, so the Mercury retrograde is the most common. So Mercury moves, I wouldn't say the fastest a planet because the moon is the fastest planet, but um, Mercury goes into retrograde the most. So
Mm.
this year specifically, it's going to go into retrograde 3 times. So this time retrograde, Mercury retrograde just went into retrograde yesterday. So, and it's going to be there for 3 weeks. And then it's going to go again in September. So it is the most common one that we have. And because Mercury controls communication and how we learn and how we talk and how we do things, technical issues, like you were saying, happen the most during Mercury retrograde. So it has a bad rap because of all this stuff. But there are good parts of Mercury retrograde because it makes us slow down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't make any fast decisions during Mercury retrograde. And it might actually help you because if you're one of those people that make decisions like really quickly and sometimes you regret them, or, it forces you to go inward and, really think about your decision before you make them. So that way there are no mistakes, so that's a good aspect of Mercury, is that it does make you slow down. And there are some people that don't get affected by Mercury retrograde as much. And I will go into that a little bit more with your birth chart, like I was talking about. If you were born with a retrograde, then you're not going to feel it as much because you were born during that energy already. So some people thrive during Mercury retrogrades and some people do not. And usually it's because they were born with one in that specific planet. And there's some people that write books during Mercury retrograde, because that's, when their energy is the most powerful because they were born and they chose to have that energy already in their birth chart. And then there's some people that shouldn't do anything during Mercury retrograde because it's just not a good idea. And there's some, like me, I wasn't born during a Mercury retrograde, but I personally haven't really experienced too much of mishaps or anything during Mercury retrograde. Cross my fingers that it doesn't happen this time around, but you never know. And it also depends on where it's hidden in your chart as well. Mercury retrograde right now is in Gemini, so if you have any Gemini placements of any kind, then it might affect you a little bit more than if you don't have any Gemini placements.
Oh yeah.
So Mercury retrograde right now is actually sitting on my ascendant sign. It's actually sitting on my rising sign. So
Yeah, Gemini's my rising sign too.
Okay, yes, okay, so we have the same energy, right? So that's perfect, right? But it depends on if you were born with one, but I was not. So I'm not really too familiar with the Mercury retrograde energy, but I know what's going to happen. So I kind of know how to go around it, Don't make any fast decisions. Don't sign any contracts. Maybe don't travel during a Mercury retrograde unless you absolutely have to, because you never know what's going to happen. If you kind of know what not to do during a Mercury retrograde, then it can be helpful. You got to slow down, re-examine how you're thinking. Don't overexpose yourself. Don't underexpose yourself to information. So sometimes going to school during this time is not ideal, or at least starting a new course or starting something new, I would say in general. But that's just a negative aspect of it. You can start school during a Mercury retrograde. There's no one telling you can't. It's just trying to be cautious if you're going to do it. It only lasts for 3 weeks, right? Mercury retrograde only lasts for 3 weeks. So it's a very fast moving planet, very fast retrograde periods, and it happens very often. And that's why everyone knows about it, because they're like, oh, Mercury is in retrograde again. And it's very fast. Like 3 weeks in time right now is very quick.
Right. When you said that, I was just thinking of when Saturn comes to visit you, it's for 2 years. So
yeah, Saturn retrograde is let me just see. Sorry, it lasts for 150 days. Sorry, that's
Oof.
Neptune. Sorry. 140 days.
140 days. Okay, I knew it was
140 days.
something like that.
Yes, it's 140 days. So that's not even quite a year.
Okay.
So Saturn is in retrograde. It started last week until October 11th.
Whew.
So
And
all the
and so,
way.
I was going to say, so for the listeners, at the time we are recording this is May 30th.
Mhm.
So by the time you're hearing this, it'll be June. So if
Yes.
you're wondering, like, wait a minute, Gemini and retrograde, that's why.
Yes, yeah. So Mercury will be in retrograde in Gemini until June 22nd, and then it'll move all the way to Libra, and then it'll go retrograde again in Libra. So that's all about relationships and stuff. Gemini is all about communication. So Mercury is the same energy as Gemini. They rule each other. They're all about communication, learning, thinking, all the stuff. So pretty much return to anything that you've already begun during Mercury retrograde is the easiest way that I can explain how to deal with it. If you've already begun something, continue on with it. Don't start anything new. Because you have to fine tune it or close it out. You gotta either keep going with it or just close it. Just don't start anything new. That is the easiest way that I can explain how to deal with a Mercury retrograde, because it can be intense. You know? If you're writing your book, continue writing your book. If you're in school, continue with school. Just don't usually try not to start anything. If you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, go for it. But because you already know that energy anyway. But you're going to know, because if you're really unmotivated during a Mercury retrograde, then it's probably the universe telling you to slow down.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm experiencing. Is I've been sleeping a lot right after the eclipse. I've been sleeping well into the late afternoon, early evening. I would wake up in between, a little bit, and then I go right back to sleep. And it's just, and I've been trying so hard to get out more material, create more things than what I've done these last couple of days. But it's just like, nope, you need to rest, you need to recharge. And I'm guessing because things are about to really speed up. So it's like, enjoy this sweet spot now.
Yeah, exactly. I was so motivated with making content last week and the week before. And like you said, as of yesterday, it's like, oh, well, I don't really want to start anything new right now. And there's nothing wrong with it. Mercury retrograde is, a time to reflect on everything. Reflect on, okay, what do I need? What do I have already on the go that I need to fine tune? What do I have on the go that I need to close? That I need to stop doing, or I need to put on pause for a second, or, this is the best time to do it. That's why Mercury has such a bad rep, because people start doing stuff that's new. They start, going to a new job. Not saying that you can't start your job today, but,
right.
They try to do something new and then something happens. Or
right.
they try to travel today and something happens. Not saying you can't travel during Mercury retrograde, but it's not suggested.
Right. And it sounds like the more they understand their chart and where that Mercury, in particular Mercury retrograde in this case, is, if any, in their chart, then they can probably, I don't know, maybe use a tourmaline crystal to help keep away negativity. Yeah. It sounds like the more they understand it, the better they can equip themselves to go out there. But also, sometimes you don't need to go out there, you need to stay and reflect. And maybe because that can also lead to some shadow work, people are just like, don't want to do it because this is the time I'm supposed to be aware of everything I've done and, reflect. And it can be a little bit hard sometimes.
Yeah, no. And I think that's why Mercury doesn't go in retrograde very long, because it's a very tough shadow time in a sense, because you are trying to not do anything new. You're trying to reflect on what you have already. And like you said, there's a lot of people that don't want to do it. And that's when they start something new, or they do something and then it gets screwed up, because that is not what your soul has tried to tell you. Your soul's trying to tell you, during this Mercury retrograde, you need to slow down, you need to sleep more often, or, something, or, don't go see your friend. Anything really. Like, if you're feeling unmotivated during a Mercury retrograde, it's probably because, you know, your soul needs you to slow down a little bit. Now, it can change. Like this retrograde, I feel like slowing down a little bit. But the retrograde beforehand in January, you know, I didn't feel quite the same energy because back then it was an Aquarius.
Right,
You
right.
know, and so it depends on, you know, where Mercury is hitting in your chart, you know, and I always go back to the birth chart because it is really important because of all the transits. Exactly what I was talking about at the beginning. Transits are so important to figure out, like, if that Mercury retrograde is on your rising sign, it's going to affect me more than if that Mercury is sitting on somebody's Chiron or something, because
Right.
Chiron is a wound and you need to heal it. And if that Mercury is sitting on your Chiron, you know, and it's in Leo, for example, you might want to get out there and go to a party or something because that's what
Mm.
Leo wants you to do.
I
Um,
love that. Wow.
yeah.
So I'm someone who comes up with movie and game references. And when you were talking, it made me think about, and I'm about to get really gamer nerdy or whatever you want to call it. When I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh on my PlayStation, I think it's like PlayStation 2 or 3 back in the day, we would, so me meaning my brother and I, when we would duel each other, we would change the environment of the card. So it would be water, mountain, forest, something like that. And it would power up his cards but take away points from my cards. It was like his power up. So that's what I'm getting from this Mercury retrograde. For some people, this retrograde is a power up. And for others, not saying that it's taking away points, but in some ways it's just like, okay, we're going to take some of your energy so you can I just combined two words, relax and rest. So you can relax and do some work. And it's funny, that's just the vision that I got from that.
Yeah, exactly. Like my boyfriend still plays with Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like he still buys
Love
them
it.
on the eBay, you know, and still plays with them. Actually, he was just doing it yesterday with a buddy playing Yu-Gi-Oh on my kitchen table. Like
Ah, so jealous. I don't even know where my Yu-Gi-Oh cards are. My brother probably sold them. I don't know. I'm just joking. He wouldn't do that, but probably got
yes.
lost in the move. But yeah, and so with that, Mercury isn't the only planet. I know you mentioned earlier
Mm-hmm.
all the planets go into retrograde, and I'm guessing they have different correspondences for their retrograde.
Yes, yes. Every planet has a different energy. So every planet relates to a sign. You
Mm.
know, every house relates to a sign and a planet. They all share the same energy. So, of course, when a Mercury retrograde happens, it's not going to feel the same as when Venus is in retrograde because Venus doesn't rule communication, Venus rules relationships. Right?
Mm.
So when Venus goes into retrograde, it's a whole nother story with Mercury. And then Venus also goes in longer, right? So it's also a longer span of retrograde. Um, you know, so it's a little bit different of an energy. So, you know, Venus only goes into retrograde every year and a half. You
Oh
know,
wow.
yeah, Mercury goes in at least 3 times a year usually, because it was in 3 times last year and it was in 3 times this year. So usually about 3 times, 3 weeks at a time. Venus is 6 weeks, so it goes into retrograde every 6 weeks. Sorry, for 6 weeks,
Mm.
every year and a half. So last year we had one, and then this year we have one, just because of the way it ran.
Mm-hmm.
So this Venus retrograde is actually not until the end of the year. It's not gonna start until December 19th, and it's gonna run until January 29th of 2022. So majority of that retrograde will actually be in the next year.
Mm.
You know, but that planet rules love and beauty and your heart and relationships. And there's a greater potential for misunderstandings and partnerships. So when you fight with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your spouse of any kind, this is probably during a Venus retrograde, because that energy is really trying to mix it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's temptation to be reckless in love, you know, and then also your appearance, you know, like body piercings and tattoos. And, you know, if you are desired to get a tattoo, it's possible that there's a Venus retrograde right now telling you this is what you need to do right now. you know?
I'm actually looking for a tattoo.
That's yeah, and you know what? The retrograde's not until the end of the year, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to. You don't have to do it during retrograde. It just so happens that
That's
when you get
funny.
an urge to get a tattoo or a body piercing, it's usually during that because Venus rules the appearance. Your body.
Wow.
You
That's
know
interesting.
how you love yourself. Stuff like that, and your whole body appearance with how people see you. You know.
Mm.
And then how to handle this retrograde is access what is really important to you and what is truly value in your life and relationships. So like if you're in a relationship, you should talk to your partner, see what's like your values and like what's really important with you, and then, look at some of your friendships. Like I know there's some friendships that end during like a Venus retrograde usually because, it's just time for them to end. You know,
Right.
if all of a sudden, a relationship just ends, it's usually meant to end, and that doesn't necessarily mean it will never come back. It was just at that time, that was your closure. And that's when, because the values were not the same in your life. I know I have lost so many friendships in my life, and some of them have come back and some of them have not because of our values are so different.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, sometimes the Venus retrograde is actually good to go back to old relationships to gain closure. So sometimes you have an ex or a friendship that has ended and you're not quite, you didn't have the closure that you should have had or that your soul desires or needs. Sometimes this is a good time to reflect back on old relationships and really get closure from them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the ex or the other friend doesn't want to, and that's okay, but at least you've tried to close it, and that might be your closure that you need too, is just giving it, one more conversation, or, like giving it closure, saying, hey, I appreciate your friendship, like this is, our values are not the same, let's just end it here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there's so much different energy with Mercury retrograde, which it messes everything up when it comes to communication and stuff, and then this one's directly on just relationships in general and how you see yourself and all your values, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then again, Venus retrograde in your birth chart means something different to somebody that does not have Venus retrograde in your chart. Again, this energy is familiar with you if you have Venus retrograde. So sometimes, you're not really affected. Like you said, a lot of people don't even know these retrogrades even happen.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are not affected by them really at all because they've already know the energy, or this one only lasts 6 weeks. So sometimes you have a breakup and you're like, that was really weird. Why did that happen at that exact time? And then you look back and it was a Venus retrograde of some kind, or, another kind of retrograde. So like the retrograde could happen in the 7th house or in Libra, which rule Venus. They both rule Venus. So if your Venus retrograde is transiting during those times, then, that could highlight that area of your chart as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I do want to mention about retrogrades being in your chart. A lot of people see that little R, like if you're looking at your chart and there's a little R beside this planet, that means it was retrograde. And some people are a little scared of them because, like with the Mercury retrograde being a bad retrograde, a lot of people think they're all bad. And
Right.
they're not all bad. There's good and bad on everything. There's a highest expression and a lowest expression of every single planet, of every single
Mm-hmm.
sign. For example, Scorpio, I'm a Scorpio sign. We get a bad rap because, everyone assumes that Scorpios are all mean and, nasty and like whatever. But
The
there's a high,
stinger.
yeah, the spinner. But there's a highest expression of Scorpio too. We're actually really friendly and really like caring because we're a water sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with retrogrades. There's a good and a bad for all retrogrades, you know? So sometimes they're more common to be in your birth chart than everyone thinks. Like there's always at least one. Usually, I haven't really met too many people that don't have any retrogrades, whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
in their chart, because at least one, because Mercury is so common that if
Wow.
you're born during that 3 weeks, you're going to have the Mercury retrograde, right? And, Venus is not as common, so sometimes, that one's a little less common, but there's nothing bad. What it means to have a retrograde in your natal chart is usually a karmic lesson. So usually
Mm.
in this spot in your chart, you tried to do this specific energy in the past life and it's giving you a second chance. Usually that's what a retrograde in the chart means, is it's giving you a second chance. So really embrace the retrograde in your chart, because your soul is pretty much giving you a second chance to do it, which is
Wow.
awesome. So I don't actually have any retrogrades at all in my chart. So I'm one of those random people that don't have one.
You're like one of those people that has like the RH blood type. It's like, I don't know. I think they're from a different planet. I don't know if you've seen that before where the scientists go, it's just blood type and no one knows where it came from.
Yes, that's definitely true. I have heard alien blood, but who knows? Who knows what it is? But I know my best friend, she's got all retrograde planets, every single one of them.
Ooh,
every single
wow.
one of them. And that just means that in your past life, you just didn't quite get there. You just didn't quite get there, and it's giving you another chance. And unfortunately, so just so happens that it's in every single part of your chart. You know, and then especially Chiron retrograde. I will talk a little bit about that later on too, but that's a definite karma lesson, because Chiron is the wounded healer, and if you don't heal that wound in a past life, then it will come back retrograde. So so that way it's a good indicator that, okay, maybe you died too early, or maybe something didn't happen, or maybe you chose a different path or something, and then it's just giving your soul another chance to heal that wound. Yes. So
that is amazing.
yeah, and some people with Venus retrograde, you know, have a past life tendency to undervalue themselves, or the lower expression is overvalue themselves. Or high, I guess it depends on how you look at that overvalue. Some people have a big ego, you know, and that could look as bad. And then some people think overvalue is good because you're actually valuing yourself. So it depends on how you look at it. But with it being in your chart, there's definitely a past life tendency with either the lower or the highest expression of that value core. You know, if you go through life not valuing yourself, you know, you go through life like kicking yourself, like I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, you know, I'm not skinny enough, or, you know, that might come back as a retrograde the next lifetime, because you need to work on that.
Right.
You know, so that's what Venus is all about.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
people, please don't be so harsh on yourself, because you're going to come back in the next life and deal with the same thing. So if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with retrogrades, you know, like we were just talking about earlier, there's such a bad stigma with Mercury retrograde, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, like you were saying, like you just need to like settle down. You know, it takes time to reflect on what part of that, you know, if Venus, for example, is retrograde in Gemini, which is where it's sitting right now, but it won't be in Gemini in December. It'll be in Capricorn. So that's a whole nother energy. But right now, you know, your value is communicating, your value is thinking, your value with, you know, all of that kind of like how you mentally, your mental health, you know, your value with that, you know, it all depends on where you're sitting in your chart. And then if Venus is in Virgo, for example, it could mean, you know, focusing on day-to-day life, focusing on serving other people, serving yourself, analyzing everything. I know I have a Virgo moon, so I understand this energy very, very well. And my Venus is also there. So that's why I'm kind of mentioning it. You know, trying to value yourself with your day-to-day living and how you go about serving yourself and other people, you know? So it all depends on where it's sitting and all the stuff, and how it's affecting the collective as well, because there's obviously collective transits as well. You know, the moon is somewhere, the sun is somewhere. It always moves around the circle of the chart. So, you know, and then, you know, you move on to the planets, and there's Mars retrograde, and Mars retrograde only happens every 26 months. So Mars does not happen very often, and it lasts about 55 to 80 days, depends on where the transit is in the chart. But it doesn't happen very often. 26 months, that's every 2 years. Usually, right? The last one we had was actually in September. of last year. So I want everyone to think back to like September 9th to November 14th last year, and what was happening in your life last year during that time. So I know it's
I'm
so
like,
hard to think back sometimes, but I know this one specifically, and that's why I'm going to mention it. When Mars went retrograde last year, I had no motivation. I literally slept for hours. Like I slept at night. I slept on my lunch period. I slept after I got home. I swear to God, I slept most of the day.
I
Because
was the oh, sorry, go ahead. You got it.
yeah, so Mars retrograde, because it doesn't happen very often, some people don't, you know, because Mars rules action, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and retrograde means slowing down because it's going backwards, right? And like taking time to reflect. And Mars rules your action and your drive. So sometimes Mars can hit people really aggressively because of these two descriptions.
Mm,
Um, and it happened in Aries last year. So Aries rules yourself, like anything that has to do with yourself. It rules
mm-hmm.
that, and that's why, like, I slept for 2 months because of that. And you know what? And it made me really reflect on, because I have recently discovered, like, when you sleep, you download stuff. You go to
Mm-hmm.
a different realm, or you go to a different dimension, or you go into whatever dreamland that you create, your soul creates, and you download stuff. So I had major downloads for 2 months, and that's why the Mars retrograde hit me so much, because I
Mm-hmm.
downloaded so much. And that's actually right after November is when I started my readings, because
Wow.
I really downloaded, and my soul was like, you are not doing what you need to do. So you need to download all of the stuff that I need you to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way, when Mars goes out of retrograde, you can really push forward. And there's nothing wrong with downloading. So I took Mars retrograde. I had no idea what was going on in September. I had to ask my astrologer friend that introduced me to all this, saying, what is going on? Why am I sleeping every day, all day? And she's like, oh, it's just Mars retrograde. And I'm like, okay. And so this is like another one that no one really hears about, but I find it really like Mercury, at least with my experience with it last year being in Aries. And I'm sure a lot of people had the same experience last year, because I did talk to a couple of people that also were like so unmotivated and they didn't know what was going on. And so sometimes it can be frustrating because
Mm-hmm.
there's low energy and decreased motivation, and projects can be stalled and lose momentum, major delays getting what you want during a Mars retrograde. Thankfully, it only lasts for 2-3 months at a time,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of it. And it's prime time, because Mars is all about action, is to reflect on the way you want to take action. So it's kind of like Mercury retrograde and not making decisions right away, because sometimes you're not thinking clearly. So
Mm-hmm.
Mars retrograde is very similar to that, with, okay, how do I want to take action here? How do I want to go about doing this? How do I want to plan my next project once Mars goes back direct? Or am I pushing myself too hard right now? Is it time to give my body some rest? Um, so I actually work in retail on my full-time job, which hopefully I don't have to do much longer. But during COVID, I'm in Canada, so we got hit pretty hard with COVID up here. We were shut down most of the summer last year. We're still shut down as of right now. Hopefully not
Mm-hmm.
so much longer. So, but my retail business got shut down, and we got bombarded with like phone calls and orders and all this stuff and everything. And finally in September, it slowed down a little bit to the point where I was able to hire some more people, and my body needed to rest. My body was
Mm-hmm.
like, you've done too much. Like, you need to reflect, you need to fix your life. You need to redirect.
Mm-hmm.
You need to redirect your life,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? Like, okay, you don't like this anymore. You need to reflect. Okay, let's give your body some rest, physical rest, emotional rest, mental rest, which is kind of like what Mercury retrograde is also, because it's all about mental.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally like Mars retrograde now that I know what it was all about, but
Yeah.
if some people are like, why am I so tired? Why do I have no motivation? You know, it's possible that Mars is in retrograde because it rules the action, it rules planning, it rules your drive. It also rules anger as well. So if you get really angry, you know.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing so hard because I remember what happened during that time. Continue. I'm sorry. I had a lot of anger.
Yeah. So it brings up all of that anger because it's stopping all your momentum. It's stopping your energy. So sometimes it's frustrating because you're like, why do I have no energy? Why? Pretty much I was asking myself why the whole time. And thankfully, no retrograde this year. Mars does not go into retrograde this year.
Thank you.
Thank
I mean, but it was
you.
good. It was
It
good
was
because
good.
I needed that. I definitely needed that. So I'll give the footnotes. I lost a lot of data, like a lot.
Yes.
And I just wanted to throw the computer out the window. Like it was a whole mess. But like you said, it was that change. Like, okay, what do you want to really do going forward? It really made me stop because I was working really hard up until that point. And I just hit a boiling point and boiling point. And so, yeah, it was a lot of anger. I was just, this is crazy. Like yeah, but it was a good thing because my energy was being directed to, not where I wanted it, truly not where I wanted it to be directed. And so I had to redirect my energy, but I needed that at the time, very frustrating, very colorful language, time to remind me, wait a minute. That's not what you really want to do. So you need to redirect, as you were saying, your energy this way. And as soon as I did that, I discovered more people online, which led me to Sam the Cosmic Witch, which led me to you. So yeah, that was needed.
Yes, and I do want to point out, because it does relate to Mercury retrograde a little bit, there was actually a Mercury retrograde right in the middle of that Mars retrograde last year. So, so from September 9th to November 14th, it was the Mars retrograde in Aries. But Mercury was retrograde right in the middle, October 14th to November 3rd, right in the middle. Wow. It was a lot of energy and a lot of, like I said, redirecting, stuff not working out, a lot of mental frustration. But these retrogrades happen for a reason. You were just stating it happened for me for a reason, and it made my life better. It happened to you for a reason, and it made your life better. So that's where the higher expression is with those retrogrades, and why I don't agree when somebody says, oh, Mercury retrograde, like this is going to be terrible, like nothing's going to work out for me. No, that's why it doesn't work out for you. That's exactly why it doesn't work out, because you already have a negative aspect with the Mercury retrograde. You know it's going to happen from, May 29th to June 22nd. You're done. Like you just wasted the whole Mercury retrograde period because you're just like, oh no, I'm just not gonna, everything's gonna happen to me. Of course they will, because you just put that into the universe. You just manifested that into the universe.
Right, without really understanding it. And I've got messages, text messages, people, some of them are really scared. And I'm just thinking like, no. You don't have to be scared. You just got to get educated and understand. Same thing with eclipse energy. Like I did spells. I worked with the eclipse energy because I just understood, people really get scared into, or they follow people who put that I don't want to say fear tactic, because I would like to think that's not what they're doing, but they don't fully understand Mercury retrograde, or maybe they're getting the information from a place that only touches the surface, and they're just regurgitating that.
Yeah, there's so much. I don't know, when I did a little bit of research for this podcast, just getting all the dates and everything, there is so much information out there, and I'm like, no wonder so many people are confused, because there's just you type in Mercury retrograde, it comes up with a million freaking links that you can click on, and they all say different things. I did see a bunch that said don't fear Mercury retrograde, which is great. At least that information is getting out there now, because like you said, there's so many people that are scared of it. But manifest, say, okay, for this 3 weeks, okay, I need to manifest, this way. Instead of manifesting negativity, because we all know with spell work and everything and manifestation, if you manifest it, guess what's going to happen? It's going to happen the way that you manifested it. If you manifest saying, okay, for this 3 weeks, I'm just going to relax. I'm just going to let the universe do what it needs to do for me and show me the ways that it needs to do. Then guess what's going to happen? It'll go the way that it needs to go. And if something gets messed up, then that's the way that it should have done it. Like, just like with your computer, that got messed up because it needed to be messed up.
Right.
Right. Things happen for a reason, right? COVID happened for a reason. I know we don't know what the reason is yet, but I know for a fact that it happened for a reason, and let's hope to God that we can figure it out soon.
Right. I will say with the whole 2020, from the time it was declared a pandemic, sometime in early, I think like the first week of March, up until even, I would say, maybe about a month or two ago, this has given me the time to do so much more reflection. I don't think I've done as much reflection as I've done roughly about a year and a few months than I did when I first started really diving into my spiritual journey, when I was working on mentally and spiritually recovering from the death of my grandparents, which took 2 years. So, but what I'm saying is I had to really reevaluate everything in my life. Like, shadow work became my best friend unintentionally.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say COVID has done for me. I mean, I definitely lost family, friends, and it was definitely a trying time. But also it really brought a lot of things to light. So, and I don't know how it impacted other people. I know it really impacted people in a negative way, but for me, it granted me that space because I had to stay home. Like, there was nothing to do but work. So that's what I would say. So maybe part of that was a time to force people to remember some of the things that they have around them, like go to a park, nature is right here. So I think that's part of it. Maybe, I know that's a little segue, but that's just what came to mind.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like I said earlier, I'm in retail and I don't want to do retail now. But you would have asked me in 2019, I would have been like, yeah, I guess this is what I am for the rest of my life because I have no other thing I'd like to do, or I don't know what my soul, like, I was taught 9 to 5 was all I needed to do and to get money, if you told me in like 2018, 2017, even that I was going to be doing this, I would have like called bullshit, really. I would have been like, are you kidding me?
Right.
I don't even know anything about this stuff. But because of what happened, it pushed me towards this universe. It pushed me towards this part of life, and now I'm with this. So everything happens for a reason. Retrogrades happen, eclipses happen, stuff like this happens, so don't think of it as a negativity. Think of it as a positivity. Like, something bad happens, you lose your job, for example. You might feel bummed out. You might feel so down in the dumps. It was a perfect job for you, but then 6 months down the road, you find an amazing job or something like that. And you realize, you know what, if I hadn't lost my job last year, I would have never found this one because I wasn't looking.
Right.
So that could happen with Mars retrograde. It can happen with Venus. It can happen with Saturn, especially Saturn and Uranus. I will go over those as well. The universe has to give you reasons to do something else. Like, if you just went through life as a linear life and you just worked from 9 to 5 and you did your stuff and whatever, that's not what your soul chose to do. Your soul chose a journey. And when it says journey, it's like, it's not just a linear straight line. It's up and down, up and down, up and down.
Right.
I've had so many jobs. I've lived in so many locations, and my life has put me here at this exact time because this is where I'm meant to be now. But you would ask me 10 years ago that I was living back in my hometown, working for my father, I would have told you were nuts.
Right. No,
right?
true. It's so true. I think about that because even now I call myself an eclectic witch. If you told me
Mm-hmm.
in 2018 that I was going to call myself a witch, I would say, I don't know. It's some negative, connotation to it. I would have to battle it. Now I'm like, bring it.
Yeah,
Now I'm like,
exactly. Mm.
exactly. I'm so for it. So, and it also makes me think about all the other things that didn't work. And The Rock has said this before that, one of the best things that never happened was him getting into the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, that was his dream. I know he went to like the Canadian League for a while or something like that, and he got cut. And, he had a second chance. And the coach called him back and he said, I'm going to think about it. And he talked to his dad, like, I want to go into the family business, wrestling. And, the rest is history. But, him getting cut and being on the couch and, really reevaluating everything led him to, this mega movie star who we know today. I mean, I've been following him like almost my entire life, but
Yeah.
since when the WWE was WWF. But it's one of those things when you are, on the couch and you're sitting there and you're just like, holy crap, like how did I get to this point? And then something just clicks. At least that's what happened for me. Like something just eventually clicks. And even, even it's so crazy. I'm thinking back to when I was a kid and I would draw these little squirrely little I don't know if you call them little swirl lines. I would like it would be an impulse. Come to find out, that swirl line has to do with not just the goddess, but the Morrigan. And it's like this whole time, the things that didn't work for me was not supposed to work. I was supposed to dabble, get, learn something from there. But I was always meant to embody the witch, and in particular, the dark witches like the Morrigan and Hecate. So it's just like such a relief when things like that happen. And that's why I'm so happy and I'm grateful that you're here on this podcast breaking these things down, even as you're talking about, your journey to this point. I know a lot of people are on their journeys and a lot of things seem confusing and overwhelming. And it feels like things are just happening to you, to or even to the collective. But there is a rhyme and a reason. There is this method, behind a seemingly chaotic series of events, and is right here in astrology. And that's just blowing my mind. Like every time I'm laughing when you're talking, I'm just like, that's just unbelievable because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just now really meeting you. And you're telling me about something that happened last year. And I'm like, well, that did happen. And it's just amazing. So I'm just like, again, floored.
Knowing astrology now and knowing all the transits and knowing, like, I can see where the transits are going to happen next week, next month, next year. And I can't even fathom now knowing the transits, how I was living my life before, thinking that everything was a coincidence.
All right.
Right? Like nothing is a
Right.
coincidence whatsoever. Everyone thinks deja vu or karma or a coincidence. Nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is karma. Nothing is deja vu. It has happened in your life before, and you probably have a retrograde planet, and that's why it's happening to you again. Or you didn't learn it in the last life, so it's happening to you again. That's what I believe deja vu is that it happened to you in a past life, and you're just being shown it again.
Mm-hmm.
You need to fix it this time. You need to do something differently this time. So nothing happens by chance. And I still have family members that don't even believe in any of this stuff. And they just still think that stuff happens for no reason. Like they just think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I walked down the street and I saw a bird and I thought of this and it was just a coincidence. No, that's probably a sign from the universe for something. And
Right.
he didn't listen to it. And
Right.
then eventually you're going to see that bird again. And eventually, hopefully, that you're going to listen to whatever sign it's giving you. That's just an example. I've never really seen bird signs, but that just for some reason came to my mind. But it's not a coincidence. Nothing happens as a coincidence. It's all written in your birth chart. It's all written into the stars. I say in the stars, in the collective, in the cosmos. When you were
Mm-hmm.
born, your soul chose Jupiter at this place, Venus at this place. It chose the moon at this place. It chose Venus there. I don't know if I said Venus already, and then it chose Venus as retrograde because you didn't value yourself enough last time, or it chose Uranus at a certain point because of all the triggers and traumas that you dealt with last time. So it's all a story.
Mm.
and it's all there for a reason. And, some things are easier than others. That happens. That's what life is.
Right.
Some lessons are easier. You find your job that you love and you might be there for 20 years because your soul has already experienced that part of the life and it came easy for you. But then maybe a relationship, maybe you've been divorced twice, maybe you can't find a partner that you just click with, because the past life, it didn't come easy to you, so it's not coming easy to you in this life. And it's all not by chance. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a reason for it. If you have Mars retrograde, since we're talking about Mars still in your natal chart, you possibly, because it rules actions, right? So you possibly underreacted in a lifetime, or you overreacted too much in a lifetime, and it's making you reconsider, how you overreacted last time, and how can you do something in your current life thing to help this action and in your intuition, you know, in this lifetime. So that's Mars. So we can move on because there's lots of planets, and like you said, no one really understood that all planets actually do this because it is an orbit. It is in orbit. All the planets move, and they all interact with each other, and they all, there's conjunctions and oppositions, which is a whole nother language of astrology that I couldn't even fathom a year ago. You know, and it all relates, like, when the Mars hits Venus, it creates a whole new energy, then if Venus touches Jupiter, it creates a whole nother energy. So these planets are moving, and they're moving for a reason, and they might slow down and go backwards in quotations for 6 weeks, 4 months, whatever it is, to reevaluate the universe, number one, and the collective, but then also have something to do with your life. And you chose that Jupiter retrograde. You chose that Jupiter sitting in that position because you knew that this Jupiter retrograde was going to happen in that exact time when you were 29 years old in the May 30th or whatever, what it is.
Yeah.
You chose that already, so you need to be, aware of it, which is great. So Jupiter retrograde actually happens once a year. So you always have a Jupiter retrograde, and it's 120 days. So just a little bit shorter than the Saturn retrograde. So this year, Jupiter retrograde happens in June. So that's the next one that's going to happen. So we have Saturn. We have Saturn already in retrograde as of now until October. We have Mercury retrograde now until June 22nd. This one's June 20th. So 2 days. So Jupiter retrograde and Mercury retrograde are only going to happen for 2 days. And then Mercury is going to go direct until September. So Jupiter retrograde June 20th to October 18th. And so some planets, depending on what degree point they're at, stay in one sign when they're retrograde, and then some planets actually go back into a sign that they were already before. Because Jupiter just went into Pisces, like, I can't even remember the exact date, but I have a post about it. So if you go to my Instagram, it says what the date was, because I posted about it because it's a huge transit. But it's going to go back into Aquarius when it's retrograde next month. And Jupiter is all about expansion and speaking your truth, and it actually rules travel as well, but traveling is a little limited right now, but it does rule travel as well. So, and it's until October 18th. The next time Mercury goes into retrograde, it goes into retrograde September 22nd to October 18th. The exact day Jupiter stops his retrograde, Mercury also stops her third retrograde. So there's probably something going to happen between September 27th and October 18th because Jupiter and Mercury are both going to be retrograde at that exact time, with like Neptune and Saturn is still going to be retrograde, and all the good transits. So there's a lot of retrogrades this year, and I don't think there was quite as many last year. I can't remember, but I really don't think there was this many. I think we have a lot going on this year because the collective is trying to reevaluate what's going on in the world. I'm sure everyone is aware that there's like 50-50 everywhere in the world. Like some people are on one side, some people are on the other side,
Right.
Of what's going to happen. And this year is really key on figuring out and re-evaluating and refiguring out everything. And where does that fit into your life? And that's where the Jupiter retrograde is going to happen in your chart. That is where you need to expand. That is where you need to expand your horizons and speak your truth. You know, you might not like your job. You know, you might want to speak your truth to your boss. You know, something like that. This is like Jupiter retrograde is one of my favorite planets. I'm going to be honest.
I was going to ask you too, what's your favorite planet?
Yes. Jupiter is one of my favorite planets because it rules expansion. It makes stuff bigger, right? Which has a bad and a good aspect to it, of course, because you don't want to make everything big. You don't want to make everything expand. But Jupiter is expansion, and it speaks your truth. You know, it rules. You know, speaking what you believe in. You know, and you know, so this is one of my favorite retrogrades, and I'm really can't tell you exactly what's going to happen because even the astrologers don't know what's going to happen because the world is so chaotic right now. We've never experienced anything like this. It's so hard to like really understand what's going to happen, but there's definitely two sides of the story right now, and this year is definitely going to be a breaking point to figuring out what's going to happen. You know, Jupiter, like I said, from June 20th, so it's about a month from now. Whenever this episode goes live, it might happen at the exact time, who knows, to October 18th. And it goes into Aquarius again. So Jupiter was in Aquarius for a little bit. It went into Pisces. It's still in Pisces. It's going to go back to Aquarius. You know, Aquarius rules community and the humanity of everything. So it's really going to touch on expanding that again because it was already kind of in that energy already. And it kind of went into Pisces to give us a little bit of a hint of what's going to happen next year because it actually doesn't go back. It doesn't go into Pisces until 2022 again. It gave us a little bit of taste, and Pisces rules spirituality and all the spiritual journeys, and that's why everyone's waking up right now. You know, I woke up, you know, a bunch of my friends are like, oh my God, I can't even believe this universe even exists. That's a little bit of a taste. That's a little taste that Jupiter is going to give us next year. And I'm super excited for it because I'm all about it. You know,
me too. Yes.
You told me 2 years ago this was going to happen. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Now I'm like, I'm all for it. Let's go.
Right.
But
bring it.
Jupiter needs to expand a little bit more and give us a little bit more truth with the humanity and the communities. You know, everyone is so segregated right now. You know, we need to bring it back together. We need to bring the community and the humanity back together. And that's what just Jupiter retrograde is really going to mean. So Mars retrograde is all about going inward, you know, your actions, your frustrations, your passions, you know, and low energy and motivation, and really going inward and figuring out, okay, what do I need to do with this low motivation? Why do I have this low motivation? What is the reason for it? Jupiter is all about outward facing. You know, the outward, that's why I'm talking about the collective with Jupiter, because it's all about the outward expansion of everything. You know, it has a similar effect, but instead of inward, it goes outward with enthusiasm and optimism. That's what Jupiter really is all about. And that's why I love it, because it's all about enthusiasm and really going for it. You know, but because it's retrograde, we obviously want to go the opposite, you know, reflect and gain deeper insights on our beliefs. So Jupiter rules our belief system, and that's why speaking your truth is very important during Jupiter retrograde, because it's really going deep. And what do I believe in? You know? And that's why the world right now is 50-50 in some ways, because people believe in this and people believe in that. And I feel like this Jupiter retrograde is just going to shake everything up. You know, with our philosophy and how we see politics and how we see belief systems and our rulers and everything like that that's happening in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to happen for 120 days. Um, so pretty much the rest of the year until October. Um, and like I said, there's a really key point with Mercury ending the same day Jupiter also ends her retrograde as well. So hopefully by October 19th, we can kind of see, the light behind
Mm-hmm.
behind everything. I've heard things with November dates on them. I've heard of things with December dates on them. So let's hope that 2022 is a little bit of a lighter, you know,
Mm-hmm.
year, even though I feel like 2021 is also a lighter year than 2020. 2020 was really hard for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
2021 is lighter, but it has a lot more collective transit. It has a lot more personal transits, um,
Mm-hmm.
in it. Because I don't recall this many retrogrades last year.
Yeah.
Because Jupiter last year. So Jupiter went retrograde May 14th to September 13th last year. And I know in my country, we were actually open during that time frame, where we were able to go outside. We were able to have, outside activities. We were able to go to a restaurant. We were able to do this and this and this. And then all of a sudden, September, October flipped, and then it went lockdown again. So that just gives
Mm.
you a little bit of aspect of what Jupiter is all about, expanding and like all that stuff. So just think back of May last year and what happened during this time with you last year and how did it affect your life. And it's possible that that kind of situation will happen again, but not in the same energy. So last year it was in Capricorn, which rules structures and restructuring. That's why in my country, at least, the economy opened back up, right? It
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen everywhere. So, just go with what my experience was. And now it's an Aquarius. So now it's all about humanity and community. And that's why I'm bringing up, the world being kind of in a standstill with what's right, what's wrong, what do we believe in? Some people believe in one way, some people believe in other ways. I'm not going to mention what I'm like, but I'm sure you understand what I mean.
Right, right.
Um, if you live in the year 2021, you know what I'm talking about.
If you're not under a rock.
There's so many belief systems, like people think this way, think people that way, and then it's really going to really shine a light on how we are as humanity, how we are as community, loving each
Mm-hmm.
other, expanding each other, so hopefully this retrograde is a little bit nicer because of the energy is not as strict as last year. Last year was Capricorn,
Mm-hmm.
all about structures and restructuring the world and what's going to happen, and now it's all about community. And hopefully next year it'll be all about Pisces. And Pisces, like I said, is all about spirituality and finding a
Mm-hmm.
new world, like a new world. When I think of Pisces, I think of new world.
That's funny you said
Yeah.
that because my moon is in Pisces. I'm like, it's not my
Mm-hmm.
rising. My rising is Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I am looking forward to, which will most likely happen next year, are in-person events. And I just started my monthly membership, the Enchantress Coven, but I'm looking forward to having in-person retreats and expanding that and expanding the schooling of really witchcraft and witchy lifestyle and other forms of spirituality, but really which goddess centered. So it's so interesting that you said that because that's the exact expansion I'm forward looking towards, because I really want to get as many people educated as possible, especially the femmes, because that's just the energy that I work in. And just as you are educating us so amazingly, I'm just like, this is what needs to be part of. And I believe I said this earlier, the curriculum, or maybe I said it before we went and recorded the episode, like this needs to really be taught in schools. So I am looking forward to having information like this, incorporated more into my works, because I want to educate the people. Like you will find more historical references and things like that also inside the covenant. And that's what I want to do, is to educate the people as much as possible. And then they can, take whatever they want and make their practice from that. But it's so interesting that you said it, because that's definitely one of my plans for 2022.
Yes, and Jupiter is definitely going to be in that sign during 2022. And we, like I said, we got a little bit of taste. Like right now, Jupiter is still sitting in Pisces, and right now, this is a little bit of taste what's going to happen in 2022, which is great. Now, obviously, different retrogrades are going to happen, different transits are going to happen. Saturn is in Aquarius right now. Saturn is going to go into Pisces eventually in 2022. Saturn's a whole nother ball game when it comes to the astrology world, and it's called the Big Daddy's planet. For a reason, because it teaches you lessons. So Saturn goes into retrograde once a year, the same as Jupiter, so it's a once a year thing. And Saturn actually went into retrograde around the same time as Jupiter went into retrograde last year, within days of each other. So that's why I mentioned, last year and what happened in this country and, all that stuff. And I think it pretty much happened in almost every other country, I believe, within some others, that, we actually had somewhat of a normal life last year in the summer, depending on where you were in some aspects, and so that's the energy that's happening. Last year, Saturn went from Aquarius to Capricorn in its retrograde. So it went, and it kind of did what Jupiter is doing this year. It kind of went into Aquarius and kind of showed us, the new world and the new way of doing things. And then it went back into Capricorn, and Capricorn rules structures. Right? And that's why the world went upside down last year, because it's restructuring everything. The world is restructuring everything. It's like, whatever your humans were doing is not working. So we need to fix it. And this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to flip everyone upside down. We're going to change everyone's life. People are going to wake up. People are going to be scared. Some people are not going to know what's going on. Some people are not going to believe it, and we're just going to flip up all the stuff. So, and I didn't really know this either until I started learning it. I'm like, oh my God, this wasn't a coincidence, at all. And because COVID started in 2019, that's when I had my reading, really. So I was very, very new to the world at that time. And when I started learning and realized that nothing's by coincidence and nothing happens for no reason, and all these transits happen for a reason, I started realizing, what? The universe has a plan for all of us, and we're just in it. And you wake up, and if you're not awake, well, you're going to be left behind, unfortunately. If you're listening to this and you're part of her group, your group there, you have awakened people. So people are going to relate to what I'm saying, because you're not going to have anybody that's in your group that is not, because they would have found you because they were interested in this lifestyle. They were interested in the subjects that you talk about. And this might actually help somebody understand, why did they lose their job last year? Or why did the virus affect them the way that it affected them? This is exactly why it affected them, and there's reasons behind it. Saturn goes into retrograde this year. So it's already retrograde as we speak. So you probably already feel this energy already. So May 23rd is when it started to October 11th of 2021. So just this year in Aquarius. So Aquarius, I've already talked to, with that energy, is all about humanity and community and that kind of new world ways. Like there's less structures, a lot of people are quitting their jobs, realizing that the 9-to-5 job is not for them. That's all Capricorn. That's Capricorn energy. That's structured. That is what we've been taught by parents and grandparents, that you need to go to school, you need to get a job, you need to live, and you need to sleep. That is like your only responsibility. You need to have kids. You need to have kids. You need to have grandkids. Yes. So with Saturn being in Aquarius, it's shaking everything up. It is saying, you know what? I don't want to do my retail job. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have kids or something like that. You're finally waking up to realize, you know what? I don't need to do this the way that my parents did it. And that's why when people say Aquarius, like we're going into the Aquarius new world, that kind of situation, that's what we're saying. And with Saturn touching Aquarius last year and then going back into structures, it still needed a little bit of time in Capricorn to reevaluate all the structures. And now it's fully in Aquarius. And now it's like, okay, now I've restructured everything. We need to go and move into Aquarius and really figure out, okay, where does humanity want to go from here? Where is the community aspect of it? All that good stuff that everyone is loving right now. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the same boat as I am.
Right, yes.
Saturn rules tradition. So traditions are going out the window. I'm going to bring up marriage, for example. Not everyone gets married anymore. When my parents got married, everybody was getting married. And if you didn't get married, then you were going to get married eventually. And that was just the norm. Same with grandparents. They got married. Now people are not getting married. They spend their whole lives with somebody, but they're not actually married. So that's one of the traditions that I feel like is going out the window in some ways, because we're realizing that we don't have to get married to stay in a relationship or have kids, and we're kind of flipping the traditions in that sense and saying this is the way we're going to do it, and it's going to be okay because this is the way we want to do it. And when people started not getting married, I know a lot of people, my grandparents or whatever, were like, oh my God, why are you not married? Like, you need to get married. Like, you can't have kids without getting married. Like, no. And my parents were even the same. Like, I've been with my boyfriend for 9 years, and she's like, you better not have a kid out of wedlock. You better not have a kid without getting married first. And I'm like, but why? Why?
You sound like me, but why?
But why is that a thing? So that's what Aquarius is all about, is fixing all of the traditions. And with Saturn being in there, ruler of structures, it's restructuring everything. So Saturn is a huge retrograde, and we're in it right now until October.
Love it.
It is one of the toughest retrogrades because Saturn rules, like I said, structures. It is referenced as the Big Daddy sign, the Big Daddy planet. So the Big Daddy's going to tell you what to do, and you better listen. Right?
Yeah, Saturn's my favorite planet. Like, I love it, and I'm learning so much more about it. And I just want to say before I forget about the marriage piece. And this is how spirit communicates with us too, because I saw, and I've been getting a lot of messages through Instagram, believe it or not. And one of the things popped up was about debunking a lot of things. If you don't want to have children, if you don't want to get married. And I tell people often, because I see it, I talk to people, and it's ingrained in them that, they want to get married. And I ask, like, is that what you really want? Or I also tell people, if you choose to live your life a certain way, I applaud you. If you want to get married, fine. If you don't want to get married, fine. If you want to have an open relationship, fine. If you want to just have dogs, fine. Like, whatever you choose to do that makes you happy, that's what's your normal. And I also read, I took a snapshot, but I got to find the actual link where it talked about divorce rates and how it was higher. And I'm thinking, because I don't want to say no one, because I take that back. I noticed with like my mom's generation, the baby boomers, and before that, some of them married for love. Some of them married because, like you were saying, everyone got married. But what I noticed, because I also used to work with a lot of older people, and they complain about their wives, is that they didn't marry the person who they are 100% open and vulnerable with. They don't know who they married, really. And so they end up doing these things like, things that are unfortunate in their marriage. And now we have people, my generation, which they call now the older millennials, and below, who are just like, I'm getting married later because right now, I graduated college. Like, I want to pay off student loans. Like, I don't want to have a kid and get married right now and have house debt and car debt and all this other stuff. So a lot of people in my generation are choosing either not to get married, they're cool with that, or getting married later in their 30s, like closer to mid 30s. And I just want to make a note of that, because part of this episode is debunking a lot of things, right? Debunking the bad rep retrogrades get in general, in particular Mercury retrograde, your journey, giving yourself space to sleep, right? And so I just want to emphasize here that this is choose your own adventure, right? And people say things out of love. They want to make sure you're secure and things like that. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you, because marriage is no joke. Children are no joke. It requires a lot of time, energy, patience, communication, so much things. So, whatever you choose to do, I applaud you, because it's not easy, and there's a lot of societal, structure still ingrained in a lot of people. And the thing that really bothers me the most is when I see people unhappy. So do what makes you happy, consenting adults, cool. That's just what I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I actually had somebody comment that was a baby boomer to me yesterday. My boyfriend just lost his job. He's 30. And she was like, well, he's too old to start a new career. Well, what do you mean he's too old to start a new career? He's only 30. So
Right.
that's exactly what you're saying, is that these mindsets of old generations, there's nothing wrong with what they did when they were younger and what they did, but now there's a whole new Aquarius generation that is going to do stuff differently. It's going to change up traditions and the way that things are done. And 30 is not old anymore. Some
Right.
people almost had adult children at 30 way back in the day because they had their kids at 18.
Right.
But now, the ways of looking at things are different. And that's what Saturn is trying to tell us. Saturn is in Aquarius now. The retrograde is going to happen in Aquarius, and it's going to affect long-term progress and traditions and changing careers. Like I said, a lot of people are navigating away from 9 to 5. They're navigating towards like something that I do with astrology, or what you do with your group. And there's a lot of people out there that are like into yoga and like doing classes online, and like this universe and the way that the virus happened is forcing people to do so, because they weren't going to do it before because they were stuck in the 9 to 5. But now that everything is online, they're actually forced to go online, and it's actually showing people that online is possible, and you can have an online community, and you can have a community. Is all about Aquarius is all about community. You can actually have a community online. You can meet people online. But before 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't do that. There was no internet, so it's just a different age. It's an age of Aquarius. And so during Saturn retrograde, which is happening right now, review your commitments. What is your job? Are you in a marriage that you don't like? Or I'm not saying get divorced, but are you in a marriage you don't like? Or are you in a relationship that you want to move on to a marriage? Review your commitments, professional goals, like I said with your job. I know for a fact now that I don't like my job, for example. Not saying there's anything wrong with retail, but it's just not for me. And I would have never realized that 3 years ago when Saturn was in Capricorn. Assess yourself in your structures in your life. Look at the way you're living your life, and is it the way that you want to live it? Because Saturn is really pushing you past your limits right now. Like I said, it happened last year from May to September. Think back at what happened then. Those are all about structures. And now it's going into, okay, how do you want to rebuild your structures, and how do you want to change, and how are you living your life to the fullest, and how you want to do it. So Saturn is a huge planet. Like, I can talk about Saturn forever. There's a huge Saturn return placement that comes in your chart that happens every 29 to 30 years. So when you have your Saturn return, I'm just going to briefly go over it. If you're not living your life the way that the universe has told you to live it, and the way that your soul chose to live it, guess what's going to happen? Saturn is going to flip you upside down, and it's going to force you to do it, because you're not living your truth. You're not living your life. And by 29, 30, that's why a lot of people have like midlife crisis is at 30, because their Saturn, taught them, oh, you're not in the right spot. Let's just flip you upside down. I know this 100% because my Saturn return happened. I had the collective Saturn return that COVID hit. So Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius was how that triggered the virus. And my Saturn is sitting at 0 degrees of Aquarius.
Wow.
So when
oh my goodness.
So when the world flips upside down, I also flipped upside down. So I had to deal with the world going upside down and then also my personal life going upside down. So, and I actually know a bunch of people that had 0 of Aquarius because it was a huge year that year because it was wasn't retrograde when I was born, but it was retrograde right before I was born. So a lot of people had that 0 degrees of Aquarius. Um, so watch out if you're not quite 29 yet, then your Saturn return is going to happen soon. But think back when you were 29, 30 years old. What can you pinpoint a time in your life that Saturn would have flipped your life upside down? And if it didn't, that means you were already in your universe goal, like in your soul's journey. It was already good. So if you never had a Saturn return, bless you. Because
I
that
have. I'm
means you're
like, yes, bless you. Whoever didn't experience that, because Saturn is not to be played with.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, if you have a Saturn retrograde, obviously in your chart, it's all about karmic patterns, structures, and so you have to really focus on if it's retrograde because that means you probably did not do what Saturn told you to do in your past life, right? If it's retrograde. If it's not retrograde, then at least it's just giving you a new lesson. That's all. But really focus on if you have Saturn retrograde in your chart because that means that you really have to focus on what your soul actually wants in this lifetime, or else it's gonna just flip it upside down. Which it does with most people. I feel like 99% of people that I talk to that I've had birth chart readings with, I tell them when their Saturn return happened, and they can tell me what happened during that time because they remember it so drastically because it hit them so hard.
Right.
And the ones that have to go back and say, what was I doing there during that time? They probably were already in their soul alignment anyway. Because if they have to go back and say, what was I doing May of 2017 or 2016, then they probably, was already kind of already in the alignment and it didn't really push them out of, alignment in some ways.
Right.
So when it's Saturn retrograde, I would just review every structure in your life, review commitments, that's marriage, that's relationships, that's work. Just be cautious of those things. And if you're not loving your job, I'm not saying quit your job, but if you're not loving your job, then maybe reevaluate and see, okay, why don't I like my job? And what would make me happy in my job? Or if I'm not married, do I want to get married? Or if I am married, do I not want to be in the marriage? Or, any kind of form of tradition or commitment. That's why the Saturn retrograde is so hard for some people because a lot of marriages collapse, a lot of jobs collapse, because you're not in alignment, so it's forcing you out of it. So it's a huge one, and it's happening right now. So just think at your life, and it's just a huge one. And like I said, I can go on and on about Saturn because it's such a huge planet, and it does so many things. It messes everything up. You think Mercury messes things up, Saturn is the worst. And a lot of
Yes.
people that don't, like I said, if they don't know their Saturn return, then they just think that their life is going to shit. Like,
Right.
5 years ago you lost your job or you lost something or something flipped up and down. You just think, oh man, like my life's terrible. Nothing's going right for me. But no, it's just the universe putting you back into alignment is what it was like. Oh, you're in the wrong job or you're in the wrong marriage or you're in whatever. And it's just flipping you upside down to put you back. Like it's a good thing. But a lot of people see it as a negative thing because they're like, oh, my life sucks or my life, is what it is, right? But then you look back, I have so many people that I read that had their Saturn return already, and they're like, oh my God, I can't even believe that was my Saturn return. Like I was so upset and I couldn't even believe my life and whatever. And then I'm reading them and they're like, I understand now why that happened. And I'm sure because you probably already had your Saturn return that you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to think if it was Saturn in return or Saturn was just in my chart at the time because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to pull up my chart, but I remember that there was like a lot of flipping upside down in my life years ago at this point.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm just like when you said that, and that's when first I was born on a Saturday, so let's start there. So I have that Saturn energy. I'm guessing that that's how it kind of works too, like the day you was born.
Yeah.
But um, also, it was it was just like huge lessons were learned. My life was totally flipped upside down, and I had to reevaluate everything. It was like survivor mode. It's just like emotions shut down. You got to do what you got to do and get things done. And here I am now thinking this reminds me so much of shadow work. It's scary. It's like, oh my God, what is going on? But the other side of that is, you know what? Actually, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. At the time, people are like, "Oh my God, what's happening to me? I don't know what's going on." But then you realize, oh, after it's happened, of course, you never realize while it's happening, except for me because I
Right.
already knew it was happening.
Right.
I was so scared. I was scared shitless, okay? Because I knew exactly what dates and times mine was at, and I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna kick my ass.
Right.
um,
Saturn is heavy energy, heavy,
but
but
if
it's
you don't
good.
know, what's happening, you don't realize until years later, until you maybe get a birth chart reading or something like that, then you
Right.
realize, why it happened to you. What degree point is it your Saturn actually?
Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh darn, because I got it done years. Actually, let me see. You said it was Astro Seek. I'm gonna put my information in.
Yeah, Astro with a hyphen seek.com.
Okay, let me see if I can pull this up really quickly.
Yeah. So, but then like Saturn, and then there's Uranus, right? Um, Uranus is, and even like it's heavy, but Uranus like rules the major changes in your life and all the trauma and the triggers. So if you think of Uranus, it's like Saturn's best friend, because it's like Saturn is the big daddy, is going to flip you upside down. Then Uranus is going to trigger you like crazy to make you change. Yeah.
Oh wow, so Uranus is like that friend that pushes you
Mm-hmm.
in the right direction, who knows that is good for you. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, come on, you got it.
Yeah, like if you have a friend saying quit your job or do this or do that, and your instincts are like, I don't know. That's probably the trigger. That's probably the trigger that the universe is giving you. The universe is giving you that friend to tell you at that exact time to do something. And if you don't go for it, then it's going to bring some traumas up to your life. It's going to bring triggers to your life. Uranus is a huge collective transit right now, with it being in Taurus. Um, because Uranus and Taurus right now is all about the physical body and your values, because it rules Venus as well. Some signs and planets actually rule each other. Some of them are doubled up. So Venus rules Libra, but Venus also rules Taurus as well. So Uranus, the ruler of major changes, is in the values and physical body sign right now. So all your five senses are really activated. Your sight,
Mm.
your touch, your smell, everything is activated right now. And there's a lot of trauma happening, and there's a lot of squares. So square is an aspect towards another planet. And it's squaring, which is really a challenging aspect to Saturn. And Saturn, I was just discussing about restructure. So if you're not in, so right now with the collective, and that's where a lot of the collective transits are happening right now with the world, because there's a lot of squares with Uranus of triggers and traumas. It's bringing up a lot of stuff with the restructuring of the world, the way that Saturn is placed. But it can also have traumas with yourself. Like, are you sick? That's why there's a virus, because it rules your five senses: your smell, your
Mm.
taste, your physical body. Are you ill? Are you not able to move? Like all of this stuff. And that's why Uranus is in Taurus right now. But then it's also like, I know there's a couple of people out there that have gotten sick, not from the virus that's happening in the world, but like in other ways, in cancer or like a stroke. And because of that physical ailment, they were able to change their life and restructure their
Mm.
life. So there's a lot of like collective transits, and then there's a lot of like personal transits depending on where Taurus is in your chart. Specifically, this is a really big one. And Uranus retrograde happens once a year, and it happens for 148 days. So last year it happened January last year in 2020, and then again August to January of 2021. So, think back to those times. This year it already happened. So it was, like I said, August to January. So it hit a little bit of this year, but then it's going to happen again in August 20th to January again of 2022. So there's a lot of like next year energy happening with this planet, and that's why I mentioned next year with Jupiter.
Wow.
So there's going to be a lot of like transits and traumas and stuff happening in August. So just be aware, look at your Taurus in your chart and see like how is that really going to affect you directly, and just be aware of it, because it's a very oddball planet and it likes to shake things up. And like I said, it's like the little assistant to Saturn, if Saturn doesn't flip it, Uranus will flip it.
No escaping.
There's no escaping these two. They're major signs. So Saturn is very slow moving. Uranus is very slow moving. So these transits happen a very long time. They're generational planets. So if you're born within, a certain time frame, then you have this planet in Aquarius, or you have this planet in Taurus, or you have this planet in Scorpio. Like Pluto is also a generational planet, so there's a lot of Pluto and Scorpio. So if you like the millennials, the Gen Z, the boomers, they're all Pluto placements. So that's how they figure out the generational things, because they go by Pluto's when Pluto is in a sign.
Interesting.
I
know that.
I don't know the dates are 100%, but that's usually like Pluto and Scorpio were like from whenever the millennials start. I'm pretty sure it's pretty spot on, because like millennials are a certain generation, then there's boomers, and then there's Gen X, and then whatever. So it's all the generational planets and how we're supposed to transform the world. That's what Pluto is.
Wow.
And that's why, the boomers transform the world in some way, and then Gen X did it, and then we're doing it, and then Gen Y is going to do, sorry, we're millennials are Gen Y, but Gen Z or Gen Z, sorry, I'm Canadian. Gen Z is going to.
It's all good. I knew what you were talking about.
I think we're the only country that says Z for Z, but anyway, but maybe not. But Gen Z, like, what they're doing, they're changing everything, with everything, with all the structures, Gen Z is changing a lot, and that's because their Pluto is in, I don't even know what's like maybe Sagittarius or maybe even Capricorn. It depends on what year they were born, right? But these slow moving planets are like a huge generational thing, and really going to hit you hard, because it's for the whole generation. It's for the whole collective.
Wow.
Ways. Yeah, it's huge. So like you think of Jupiter is only going to last, Jupiter only lasts, let me go back, sorry, like 121 days, but then you think Mercury only lasts 3 weeks.
Right.
Mercury is going to hit you like this, and then it's going to move on, but Saturn and Uranus and Pluto are all going to hit you for a longer period of time. Like Pluto takes years and years and years to get out of the sign. Uranus takes forever to get out of the sign. Pluto takes forever to get out of the sign. So it's going to hit you a little bit harder, and it's going to be more life lessons for those planets than the ones that are just going to hit you like for like 3 weeks. That's going to like maybe flip your life over for like 3 weeks, and then it's going to be over.
Right.
Pluto's going to hit you a little bit harder depending on where the placement is and what the retrograde is. And Pluto's in retrograde right now in Capricorn. Yeah, it's in retrograde. I'm just going to double check that. It is in retrograde right now in Capricorn, and Capricorn rules all the structures, right? So that's why the world's still restructuring everything, because Pluto's still in it. And as soon as Pluto moves into Aquarius with Saturn and all the other planets that are going to be in Aquarius at that exact time, it's going to, be a whole new world. And, it's going to be super exciting. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen. But Uranus, like I said, goes into retrograde in August. So that's when stuff is going to shake up, and it rules freedom and independence. So
Wow.
I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I'm going to talk about the collective with this one because it's going to affect the collective a lot with Uranus because it's going to shake stuff up and independence and freedom. And I know there's lots of talk about freedom and traveling and, independence in the whole world as a spectrum. And this Uranus retrograde is really going to shake things up. Starting in August, major changes in the collective, major changes in freedoms, all this stuff. And I guess it depends on where you live in the universe to see how it's going to affect you. U.S. is going to be affected. U.S. is going to be affected differently than here in Canada, the UK, wherever. Australia, for example, I have a bunch of people in Australia. They're living like their normal lives down there. And then there's us that are not. So Uranus is going to shake stuff up. And if you have Uranus retrograde in your natal chart, then you have a little bit of a detachment to the collective because you just don't quite understand it because it's retrograde and it's going to shake stuff up. So you're already in that shaken up mindset. So Uranus is going to feel really natural to you when it's retrograde if you have it in your chart. So I haven't met too many people with Uranus retrograde because it's a lesser, it only happens like once a year.
Wow.
So it's a very strong planet to be in retrograde. And like you said, with the Mercury retrograde being so popular, and I'm actually surprised that no one else knows about these other retrogrades because it does shake your life up so aggressively. But like I said, to the people that are not conscious of astrology and the universe, they might think it's just all by chance. They might think it's all about coincidence and stuff, and they don't
or
realize
someone put a curse on them. They had bad luck.
Yeah. So they don't understand that it's actually for a reason, and the universe is going to be in retrograde all year this year to restructure everything, to refix everything. So, there's reasons there's reasons for everything, and then, there's Neptune and Pluto. I've already talked to Pluto a little bit, but there's also like Neptune and Neptune rules subconsciousness, so if somebody has Neptune retrograde, for example, in their chart, they might not understand a couple things because they might not understand it because they can't see it. Subconscious is like all about the subconscious mind and they don't understand how things work. Creativity, imagination, all your dreams, a lot of people with Neptune and Pisces have a really hard time communicating, because the Neptune rules Pisces and it's all about the subconscious and they don't understand, how things work. But it's all about feelings and stuff too because of the emotions. But when Neptune is in retrograde, we really want to nurture those very things that come up during that retrograde period. So it's going to happen in June as well. This Neptune retrograde is going to happen in June 25th to December 1st, and it's going to be in Pisces. That's why I mentioned Pisces.
Yay, Pisces.
So Neptune is already in Pisces, so you might feel the not really too sure what's going on. Like I can't really see how the world's gonna go. Like a lot of people are kind of like, I want to do something, but I'm not really too sure how to get there. That's all Neptune retrograde, and Neptune in Pisces is almost the same energy. Last year it happened almost at the exact same time. It was June 23rd to November 29th last year, and it was also in Pisces. So like I said, Neptune is a very slow-moving planet. So Neptune has been in Pisces for a very long time because it's one of those generational planets. And so that's why some people don't see the end of the light of the tunnel. Like they know that this started in 2019 and they don't know when it's going to end. They don't see the end date because it's all Neptune and Pisces energy. It's very difficult to grasp this kind of energy. So how to handle this retrograde starting in June 25th, I'm going to go over this one really aggressively, is you review your unconscious feelings. So really sit with yourself, like meditate, do some yoga, like go inward for this one because of Pisces, and really reflect on how are you feeling, and like, do you have anxiety? Do you have nervousness? Like, how are you feeling? and then where are you deprived from something that you would like, strengthen your imagination. So a lot of people have a hard time imagining how their life's going to be, right? So try to imagine it, not manifest, but imagine, like, how do you want your life to be a year from now? Like, just imagine, think about it, and really feel how you're feeling unconsciously. So like Neptune is sometimes hard to navigate because it's so unconscious. Like people can't figure out Neptune is blue, the planet's blue. And some people forget Neptune, because it's such a unconscious planet. And but it is a huge planet. There's a lot of confusion that comes with Neptune because, like I said, some people can't see Neptune
Right.
because of the subconsciousness. And some people that were born with the Neptune retrograde might have lots of confusion and attachment, or the inability to attach when it comes to love or sacrifice or just being a being in general, because they can't see the human body. They can't feel, you know what I mean? It's a really hard planet to really understand. So for me, I'm still learning about Neptune retrograde. This is a really hard one to really grasp because you can't physically see this energy. It's all in your brain. It's all when you sleep. It's all like when you meditate. Can you meditate? I can't meditate for the life of me. So how am I supposed to tap into my unconscious feelings when I can't even get into that? So, just working with your subconscious self and really like try to get into that. But like I said, it's very unseeable, and that's why the planet, the world's going through this Neptune retrograde last year and this year because it's hard to see what's going to happen. And that's why a lot of people are scared or anxious, or they don't know what they're going to do. They think that one side's right and then the other side's wrong, and then one side, the opposite, because they can't see the outcome.
Right.
And that's going to happen until Neptune gets out of Pisces, which is going to be, not for a while. Unfortunately, it's a very slow moving planet. But once it gets into Aries, it's going to be a little bit lighter because Aries is all about your physical body, and it's going to go from your subconscious, and it's going to be like, oh, I can see it now. So like in the next couple of years or so, I'm talking like the next couple of years, because Neptune's going to go retrograde every year. But once this, and it's been happening for years now, with not being able to see how the world's going, like, the world's on fire, the world's breaking, everyone's fighting, and how are we going to resolve this? That's what Neptune in retrograde really, and Neptune and Pisces in general really, is really trying to show us. And then once it gets into Aries, hopefully it'll be a little bit lighter. And I talked about Pluto a little bit, but I do want to touch on, I hope we're not going over time too much.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just getting a vision when you were talking about Neptune of what's that character called? Rip Van Winkle, the guy who would sleep all the time, and I just imagine, him like touching people's third eye, making them go to sleep so they can dive into their subconscious in dream time, and then come back up with the answer.
Yeah, exactly. We're all in our subconscious mind right now. The world is in their subconscious mind right now, and and eventually the world's going to wake up, and hopefully Saturn does its job, Uranus does its job, Pluto does its job, and we wake up to a whole new world, and everything's going to be golden, and everything's going to be good. But who knows what's going to happen? But at least the transits are showing us that this is what's supposed to happen right now. Like, this is not a coincidence what's happening in the world, and the retrogrades are not a coincidence. They're shaking things up for a reason. They're expanding stuff. They're showing us our values. They're showing us what our structures are and how we need to change them, and then your chart shows you where your specific life, like my job's got to change, but what if somebody's marriage has to change, or somebody's values need to change, or somebody's family needs to change? It depends on where in your chart it's sitting. And so that's why it's so important to figure out where those retrogrades are happening for you, because then you can navigate it. Because Neptune retrograde in Pisces So that's the collective. I just told you about the collective, with it being subconscious and not being able to figure out what's happening in the world. And, people are on both sides and not seeing what the end game is. But where is that affecting you? What does that affect you, for example? Right? Like it's actually affecting my 10th house, which is my career. So that's why my job is it's changing, because that's where it is in my chart. But in your chart, it could be somewhere else. In somebody else's chart, it could be somewhere else. So somebody could be really happy with their job, and then I tell them I'm not happy with my job, and they don't understand me. Well, that's why, because their transit somewhere else in their chart.
Right.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on Chiron just quickly, because Chiron is my favorite, not my favorite planet, because it's not a planet. But I love talking about Chiron in people's charts, because as soon as I start talking about Chiron, they're like a light bulb. They're like a light bulb.
I'm excited.
Is like switched off. So I'll talk about the birth chart a little bit, and then I'll go over the retrograde. So Chiron in your birth chart shows you where you had a wound in your past life and where you want to heal it now. Like I touched on with the retrograde, if it's retrograde, then that means you didn't fix that wound in the past life and it's giving you a second chance. But if it's not retrograde, which Chiron only goes retrograde every 5 months. So that one's a very common one as well, because it goes retrograde every 5 months. And it really shakes stuff up into the universe. And if something's not working, it's kind of like Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, and Chiron kind of all work kind of together, because they're all kind of slower moving planets, right? So when I talk about Chiron and I tell them where their wound is, they're like, oh my God, like I can't even believe that. So my wound, I'll go over mine because I know mine very, very well. And when my astrologer friend that gave me my birth chart reading told me about this, I couldn't believe it. Okay. So my Chiron rune is in Leo, which is shining your brightest light and showing how you show up to the universe, because it rules the sun. So think about the sun being your brightest light, right? And my Chiron rune is in there. My Chiron rune is in there. And it's also in the third house. The third house rules communication. So as I was a child, I was told as a child, and I'm sure a lot of people in my generation were told the same thing, because that's how their parents were raised. Do not speak unless you're spoken to. You know that saying, do not speak as a child until you're spoken to. So my wound is in that, because I need to speak my truth. I need to speak what I believe in. But I was told as a child that I couldn't do that because I wasn't allowed to unless somebody spoke to me first. So I brought that saying into my whole adulthood, my whole teenage years, my whole adulthood. People thought I was rude and I didn't like them and everything, because I never talked to them first. I just sat there like a brick in a chair, and I just sat there and listened, and I looked angry the whole time because I was just mute. I couldn't do anything. So I never made any friends because of it, because people didn't think I liked them, and that's all because of something that my parents taught me when I was younger. And when she told me that, I couldn't even believe that was like a wound, that my soul chose to have that wound, to choose to have the parents that I chose to tell me to not talk unless I was spoken to. And I'm sure a lot of kids are in the same boat as I am. I actually know a lot of people with Chiron and Leo, because you attract people with the same wound as you. Because in order to heal this Chiron wound, you need to heal yourself. In order to heal yourself, you need to heal other people. So I needed to find people that also lost their voice, that couldn't understand what was going on in their life, and I needed to heal them. And in order to heal them, I could heal myself. So when she told me about this astrology world and how I was going to do it, I couldn't believe it. And now look at what I'm doing. I am showing people where their Chiron wound is and how to heal it. And in order for me to heal my wound, I need to heal theirs. So, and in order to heal theirs, I just tell them where it is, and they can direct it and figure it out, and how can they heal it themselves. So, and me being on this podcast today is exactly what my Chiron wound is speaking your truth, communicating in general, and shining your light on, and what have you learned? I've learned about astrology, so I'm sharing it, right? So right now, as I'm talking to you, I am healing my Chiron wound, which is insane to think about, because when I was a child, I was told, like I said, don't speak unless you're spoken to, or don't do this, or you're going to be ignorant if you do this. And because our soul chose to be here during this exact time, and I chose this exact wound, I couldn't believe and like when I tell other people where their wounds are, they can't even believe that because I don't know who they are. Like I don't usually have a conversation with them before the reading unless they're like a family member or somebody that I've actually spoken to before. But for the most part, I really don't know their in-depth life, like only what they really told me, right?
Right.
Um, you know, I only know so much unless they're a cousin of mine and I know their entire life or something.
Yeah.
You know, I have done my cousin, that's why I know. So it's really hard to do family sometimes because you're like, it's kind of like going to a psychic. You're like, you already knew that.
Right.
You know, so that's why I wanted to mention retrograde, because if your Chiron is retrograde in your chart, then it is something that you did not you couldn't heal in the past life, and that's why it's retrograde this life. So that way you have a second chance to do it. And the why I love Chiron retrograde so much, it's every 5 months. So it's in July this year, July 15th to December 19th, and it's in Aries. So Chiron in Aries has been a thing for, I'm going to say, not even a year. I can't exactly remember when it went into Aries, but it went into Aries while I was learning astrology. So that's why I'm saying like less than a year. It's all about yourself. So right now the collective Chiron is telling us, heal yourself. You know, what do you like about yourself? What don't you like about yourself? Change stuff that you don't like. You know, express yourself the way that you want to express yourself. But when Chiron is not retrograde, it's really about outward wounds. But when it's retrograde, it's all about going inward. And, you know, you might experience isolation and deeper emotional frustration because you're going inward. But in order to heal your Chiron wound, you need to go inward because it's all about healing yourself. Right? When Chiron is direct, you need to go outward and find yourself outward. So right now it's direct. So we're like going outward and finding the truth and finding our healing outward. But once it goes retrograde in July, I would really focus on kind of like what I was saying with Neptune, is really going inward and finding, okay, where is this wound hitting me? And number one, where is Chiron wound in your birth chart? But then also, where is Chiron hitting in your in the collective chart as well? Like what house is it hitting? Because that's where you want to go inward and where you can really truly heal this wound, because everyone has a chance to heal every part of them, because Chiron is going to go around the chart in their birth chart in some ways. So you get to heal every aspect of yourself in some ways because of the Chiron collectively hitting everything. So, and then, you know, some people with Chiron retrograde in their chart, they sometimes don't understand the ugly parts of humanity, you know, like, you know, the bad parts of being a human. You know, and that's why they're giving you a second chance to do it again, because you did not see how the bad parts affected people, and you know, you might have done a bad thing in your past life, and it's letting you have a second chance in your daily existence and helping heal yourself by healing others. So that's a very important part about Chiron, is in order to heal that wound, you need to heal others. And that's why it's so important to understand where yours is. Because if you know where yours is, then you know how to heal yourself, because you know how to heal others, you know. And that's when she told me, you know, this is what you're going to do because this is how your Chiron shows up. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to do this. I don't want to shine my light. I just want to sit and be a hermit. I'm good at the back of the classroom, not talking. Like I've never raised my hand unless the teacher called upon me, because that's what I was taught. You know, and I always knew the answer. I was really good at school, but
I hate when it happened too.
Yeah, I never rose my hand up, you know, because I wasn't being called upon, you know. And but when I was called upon, I knew the answer, so I was shining my light. So, you know, it was a catch-22 a little bit, because it's like, okay, when you got called up upon, you were able to shine your light, but you don't have to always be called upon. You can actually just show your truth. You know, you could just go on Instagram and you can talk. I didn't do stories for the longest time because I didn't want to, because no one was asking me to. So, and still to this day, I still question myself, like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? You know, and you're always going to be dealing with Chiron, because it's a wound that's it's going to be your whole life. And then eventually, if you figure it out, then you won't have Chiron and Leo again, thankfully, but you'll have Chiron somewhere else, and then you can help somebody else. But you're going to be dealing with it. You're going to always have doubts. You're always going to go back to your default, and this is why you got to shine your Chiron moon. So really during this retrograde, July 15th to December 19th, I would really like people to go inward and really figure out, number one, find out where your Chiron moon is, and then find out where the transit Chiron is, and really go inward and find how can you get out of this karmic lesson, and how can you heal other people while doing it yourself. That's the prime example. And then that's why a lot of people are finding themselves right now, because Chiron is in Aries, right? It's all about yourself. So that's why a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people are, doing different things because the Chiron is showing them they can't. The Chiron is showing them that they can. And then now it's time to go inward for the retrograde. I love this one. A lot of people don't even realize Chiron's retrograde because it's an easier transit because you're going inward, right? You don't have to express yourself outward. You can just go inward and do it. So, a lot of yogis love Chiron retrograde because they're already doing the work. They're already doing the work anyway. If you're good at meditating, you're good at journaling, you're already kind of doing the work of Chiron retrograde and healing your wound anyway. But yeah, that's what that is. So that's all I have for all the planets. I know there was a lot, but that's as short as I could possibly get.
No, it was amazing. Like, I am learning a lot. Like, my mind is blown. I had tears in my eyes when you talked about the Chiron. So I'm on the Astro website, and my Chiron is in Gemini. And as I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. It's not in retrograde, but it's in Gemini. And I'm just thinking to myself,
what house?
The 12th house.
Ooh, okay.
So actually, let me click on it again, because it just where'd it go? Oh yeah, it just stated how. Let me read this one sentence.
Yeah, that's just a generic description of it, but at least it gives you a brief description on that site. And to be honest, that site's pretty accurate, but it all depends on where your other placements are as well. So you do have to keep that in mind.
Got it. Because here it talked about how I communicate with people, but then it said or states here that without success, these people keep trying to explain to others what they wanted to say, what they said, and what they meant by it. They either believe that no one listens to them, or that that it doesn't matter how hard they try. And I was literally thinking about this yesterday, because I have been telling people exactly not just how I feel, but what they've done, in order for them to take accountability. Like, hey, even while we were having that disagreement, I stated, this is what you're doing. You have displacement, that shouldn't have been directed towards me. And even when I'm saying that, it's just like, yeah, they don't care. They want to do what they want to do. So I've experienced that frustration of, are you not even listening? Yeah. Even when I give readings, it's just some people want to hear what they want to hear. And it's just like, no, like, are you not listening?
I find that if people are not receptive enough to the reading, that they're not meant to have it at that exact time. And that's okay. There's a lot of people that have psychic readings that they're just not ready for them as well. At that exact time, they might have felt called to go, but or their friend was making them go, or their friend told them to do it, and they just weren't ready. Their soul wasn't ready to listen. And I find that a lot with some readings, I never ask them, do you want a reading? Because if they're not asking me for a reading, they're not ready.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely do not do that.
Yes. So there's some people that, their friend had a reading with you and they loved it and their soul was meant to do it, but then they made their friend do it, and sometimes their friend's not ready. So
that happened, well, years ago, when I used to have people call in, and when I did the private readings, the feedback, like some people would say, oh yeah, like I knew that, but I want to do this. It's like, well,
and their soul's just, their soul's going to the negative aspect of that sign. They're going to that negative aspect, and they're just not ready. And that's what Saturn does, is if they're not ready and if they're not listening, then Saturn's just going to make them do it. you know.
Ah,
So if they're just not ready for their life to change, or they're not ready to quit their job, or they're not ready, whatever, but then their soul wants them to be in alignment, Saturn's just going to mess it up. Um, Now, just be cautious with the 12th house, because a lot of subconscious stuff, and that's why, with Chiron being there, you might not understand that sign as much, because of that Neptune subconscious 12th house energy.
right.
And
Yeah.
I would look to Neptune, wherever Neptune is in your chart, to really navigate that. Um, what's your Saturn? Your Saturn's in Capricorn?
My Saturn is in, I think that's a Virgo. It has that M with the little hook on the end.
Oh, okay. So you're a little okay. So yeah. So
Let me see.
uh,
Oh no, I'm sorry. My Saturn's in Scorpio.
I was
Sorry.
about to say it's a little okay. So yeah, Scorpio. Yeah, that was probably your Jupiter in Virgo. No,
Let's
they look the same.
see.
They
Jupiter has little squiggly. My Jupiter is in Aquarius.
oh, okay. Yes. So your Saturn is in Scorpio. So you had your Saturn return quite a while ago. And it's all about transformation. And what house was it in?
6.
Yeah, so transforming your life, your day-to-day living, and how you see day-to-day living, and transforming it, and something had to die in a sense to be reborn. So just think back of your life. you know I can look to see when Saturn was in Scorpio. I actually don't read too many people with that placement, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm learning, like, the only thing that I understood from when I had my chart done years ago was my
Mhm.
sun, moon, and rising.
Oh,
So
so
this is
it was in between 2012 and 2014.
yeah, yep, yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
yep, exactly right. Exactly right. Yep, that's when a lot of yeah, stuff went down. That is
See, but
100%
that's
accurate.
exactly what I'm saying. Is you didn't know exactly when it was, and then as soon as I tell you exactly what years it was, or roughly around what years it was, then you understand. Oh shit, that's
That
when that happened. You know.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So that's when my life flips upside down. But it's roughly with 29, 30 years old. That's roughly when it happens. It depends on what degree, and then when it was retrograde and everything. Some people get it earlier, some people don't get it until 30. So it depends on what degree it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sitting in Aquarius right now. So, if you're born, I was born in 91. So if you're born in 91 to, I think, 92, I think your Saturn return is hitting right now. So,
Oof.
yes.
Good luck.
Yes. Well, I've already had mine. Mine's gone and gone now. So thankfully, but
Yes.
good luck for everybody else.
For everyone else, yes.
If I hadn't found astrology and you would have asked me 5 years from now, your Saturn return was in 2020, I would have been like, oh shit.
Yeah.
but
What I gotta
a,
do.
but a lot of people in 2020 could feel the same way. So in years from now, some people might get 2020 mixed up with their Saturn return, because that Saturn placement really hit a lot of people because it changed the world.
Yeah.
And
Right.
only people that were born early 90s will actually have their Saturn return at the same time as COVID. So you can really say, I really changed the world because my Saturn return forced me to move and change and do whatever during COVID. And, I'm still working around it because, I still have to live and make a living. So, but slowly but surely, that's what it is. So hopefully, if anyone has Saturn in Aquarius or Pisces or Aries, whatever is coming up, then your Saturn return's coming. But I can always give you the exact dates if you want them, if you want some insight in the future.
Yes, yes. So please go visit Ally, get her, information, reach out to her, especially now with knowing all this and understanding just how, these celestial planets, bodies really have an impact on our day-to-day lives. It's so important. What I love about this too is that, while yes, we can use crystals and things like that. Like, I have a lot of fire in my chart, so I absolutely love doing fire rituals and things like that. But this is all about you. This is all about the person. So a lot of times people get overwhelmed with, do I have to buy, colored candles? Do I have to get this crystal? Do I need to buy these dried, flowers and things like that? That's the one thing that I, again, love is that this involves you, just you, just you, your mind, your emotions.
Yeah,
It starts
everything.
with you. Everything starts with you. And you have the power to really, I mean, it's written right here.
It's written
It
right there. Yeah.
is written right there. This is why I'm just like so floored, because if I just had this, and you know what, I'm not even mad that I didn't have the information before, because as you were saying, that wasn't a time, like you were saying with the reading, it wasn't a time for me to have that information. It was meant for me to go through that. And now I'm learning this, and now, I can go forward with this knowledge. So, it's all part of the journey, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, your soul has already chose your journey. You just sometimes it's a benefit to know what's going on, and then sometimes not. I personally can't read my own chart for that reason. So, and I'm not the only astrologer that cannot read their own chart. So the reason
Right.
why you can't read your own chart is because it's too personal.
Right.
You
Right.
know, you're not going to read it the same way as somebody else is going to read it, because you're like, no, that's not going to happen, or I'm not going to let that happen, or this or that or that. So
Yep.
you need an outsider to read it. So yeah, you can learn astrology and you can learn all this, but you still probably not going to be able to read your own chart in a sense, because your life is your life, you know, and you might need an outsider to push you.
Right.
How, like, you need an outsider to be like, you know what, your moon is on your Saturn right now. You have a lot of emotions. You need to do this. You need to do that. Blah 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 blah. Whatever it is, and that's a benefit for me as well, because I can't read my own chart. So in a sense, I don't actually know what the universe has entailed for me either. I have like a general idea because I understand the transits and how they go, but because it's so personal to me, I still can't read my own chart. So I'm still in the dark in some ways as well, which is really nice. But at least I can help other people with finding their goals, and at least give them a little bit of insight of what's happening with their chart. And it's not by coincidence, it's not by chance that they found me at the exact time, or they found another astrologer that brought them to me, or they found you that brought you to me. It's not a coincidence that it happened. I could have found astrology in 2010, and I wouldn't have related to it the same way as I did in 2019. It all depends on what your soul chose to do. And actually, I was reading, not reading, sorry, I was listening to another podcast today about, it's not no, it's just not right now. So you like, just like what we were talking about with the readings, is you might have had a client that had a reading and they just didn't agree with what you were saying or whatever. It's because they were not meant to hear that right now. Or you could have a job that you absolutely love, and for some reason you get fired for no reason. And then you find out 5 years down the road, when you get another job, oh, well, if that job hadn't worked out, if that job didn't work out, then I wouldn't be here now. So you were in the right spot 5 years ago, but the universe told you were not ready. So it sometimes has to flip you upside down, put you somewhere else, and then finally, puts you in the right spot. I have a bunch of people that have done that. They've gone into their field, they love it, they lose their job, years and years and years working for something that they hate, and then finally they get the job that they love in the field that they were already in 5 years ago. But it just wasn't the right time, because the universe is like, you're in the right spot, but you're in the wrong time zone. So the time frame. So you need to like move and shift and flip around, and then you can go to this spot. It's not all by coincidence, though.
Not at all. Not at all.
All.
And this is so fascinating. So fascinating. Any final thoughts? I mean, we covered so much, and I'm just so excited, and I can't wait for everyone to listen to this and take in the information and reach out to you and really understand what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to understand with all the planets and why they're retrograde and how to go about them, and and how they affect you specifically, and then how they affect the collective, because it's gonna, like you said, it's all about together, and everything happens for a reason. So Yeah, it's just a lot to, I'm hoping people are still listening at this point and they love it. And you can always re-listen to this as well, or you can reach out and like I said, I can tell you how Jupiter retrograde is going to affect you and how Saturn retrograde is going to affect you, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Because, or you could just go to the website yourself. Like it's like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's a free website. I don't pay for it, so it's all public knowledge. And I love the people that come to me and say, I had one person come to me saying, "Well, I just don't have the site to get my birth chart." I'm like, "Actually, you do. um, it's just whether or not you can read it."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But this site does have a brief description at the bottom of all the transits. But I do have to add, like I said at the beginning for you, is it's just a brief description of generic reason of why why Jupiter is in Gemini or why Jupiter is in Virgo. It all depends on what house it's in, where are the other planets, where's your Saturn, where's your North Node, where is your Sun, where's your rising, where's your moon. Like it all depends. So it's just giving you a generic brief description. But of course, they're pretty accurate. That site's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always just a bigger picture. It's always a bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
than just because not everyone, Jupiter and Virgo, for example, are going to be the same.
Right.
Like Jupiter and Virgo in the fourth house, which is my placement, somebody that was born on the same day as I am, or even the year after me, could have the same placement. But where's their North Node? Where's their Sun? Where is their Moon? Where is their Chiron? Right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
they might express themselves in a different aspect than I do because my placement's the same as theirs, but my other placements are different. So that's why a lot of people, same as the horoscopes, is they don't they don't relate to it because they're just going on the Scorpio horoscope or they're going on the Capricorn horoscope, and not all Capricorns are the same and not all Scorpios are the same.
That's for sure.
Um, because it
Yeah.
depends on the energies that your soul chose to have in this lifetime. So,
Right.
Scorpio, October Scorpio is different than November Scorpio, even.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact because my best friend's an October Scorpio and I'm a November one, and we're completely different people.
Oh my gosh, that's like me and my best friend. I'm a Virgo. I'm a Virgo and born in August, and she's a Virgo born in September. And I would say she's more of the the nicer one, but I don't mean nice in a bad way. I mean like I'm the one that's like no, 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 no. She's like, oh, give them a chance. I'm like, okay, maybe.
Yeah, no, Virgos overanalyze everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you're. I have my moon in Virgo, so
How
I
about
definitely
that?
definitely understand that. And that's another thing is that we attract the same kind of people. So like
Right.
you're Gemini rising, I'm a Gemini rising. Your sun is in Virgo, I have my moon in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
And your moon is where?
Pisces.
Pisces. Okay, well I don't have any Pisces energy, but that's still the same. Like we attract the same kind of people, and the same with the Chiron. We attract the same Chiron people. We attract the same North Node people because those are the people that have the same goals as us. So we're
Mm-hmm.
obviously going to attract those kind of people. Um, because we're trying to help those people or we're trying to grow with those people. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, I don't actually meet that many Gemini rising. So I'm super excited that you're a Gemini rising like I am because I don't meet very many.
Right.
Um, I don't know why. I don't know why there's not that many of us in this universe. There must be, but I'm not sure why I haven't come across them. I get a lot of Virgos and a lot of Scorpios because of my moon and my sun. Um,
Right.
I get a lot of Libras that think they're Scorpios, because they're so close to the cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, that's right. I didn't think about that.
and that's a whole nother podcast with the whole on the cutoff, on the cusp of the signs too. So
Oh yeah, how about that? Well, that sounds like another series,
that's
Zodiac series.
yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I definitely feel so much better having known this information, especially at this level. I mean, I know that you said you kept it brief, but I just felt like it was so much beautiful information that I have a better understanding now. And it doesn't feel like this whole like, oh my gosh, like am I ever going to really understand it? Is it going to take me years just to understand what this one thing means? So again, thank you for breaking this down, even giving us dates that help us even reflect on the previous years, because that really holds an impact too. So thank you for all this, again, wonderful, beautiful knowledge. I know that everyone listening to this is going to feel relief, if nothing else, from this. So just thank you.
Yeah. So, and I want to add, don't be afraid of retrograde. So next time Mercury goes into retrograde, it's already in retrograde right now, but I mean, like, next time in September, don't be scared of it. Embrace it. Things are going to come up that needs to come up, and you just got to embrace it. Something doesn't work. Oh, well, doesn't work. Just don't have anxiety. Like, just try to just let the universe do what it was meant to be. So that's why just debunk all the negativity when it comes to retrogrades, because, they're done for a reason. So.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thanks again. I am sending everyone so much love. Blessings. I am rooting for you. Remember to be kind to yourself. Until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, Magical One. Let's keep in touch. Join the VIP email list by going to tiamariejohnson.com. And as always, I'm sending you lots of love, many blessings. I'm rooting for you. And remember to be kind to yourself. Until next time.